you very much, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to the Daiwa Anglo-Japanese Foundation. My name is Jason James, and I'm just going to do the housekeeping announcements first. There are two housekeeping announcements. First is, if the fire alarm should go off, please don't use the lift. You have to go down the stairs, down 2 floors, out the front door, and we should congregate on the park side of the street. And the second thing is, please don't leave any valuables in our cloakrooms, because nobody is monitoring them. We have had things disappear in the past, although thankfully not recently. Well, I hope you've seen the exhibition by Saya Kubota downstairs. We had a talk a couple of weeks ago focusing on one part of the exhibition, and today we're going to focus on the missing post office project, which is in the Muse side of the gallery. So I hope you had a chance to look at it. They will explain it in detail, but I might just preface what they're going to say by mentioning that I actually made a pilgrimage to the post office in Awashima, a very small island just off the coast of Shikoku, which itself is the smallest of Japan's 4 main islands. The post office was shut, as I believe it usually is. It's only open for about 2 hours a month or something, as far as I can tell. But that seemed vaguely appropriate. And I can report anyway that it's a very nice island, and especially with the post office shut, you can probably exhaust the possibilities of Awashima within a few hours. But it's quite a nice place for a day trip if you're in that part of Japan. But I don't want to say any more myself. We're going to have a conversation. So Saya is going to talk about the project, yeah. I think, and Brian Payne, also in his postal uniform. I met him naked in the toilet a moment ago. As he changed into it. Yes. Yeah, Brian's gone postal. So, Saya, you're going to talk about the artistic side of things.
Yes.
And Brian, who actually used to work for the General Post Office in this country, and is therefore very appropriate to be our UK postmaster for this project, is going to talk about more postal things.
It'll be a surprise.
It'll be a surprise. So on that note, Saya, would you like to take over?
Not a huge surprise.
Mm-hmm. Hello. I would like to start by saying that I'm delighted to have had the chance to hold this talk event and to develop and exhibit the Missing Post Office project in the UK. It's been 2 years since I started the project Missing Post Office, which was originally launched at the Awashima in Kagawa Prefecture in Japan, as part of Setochi Triennial in 2013, developed through half a year artist in residence. The post office, which accepts letters to unknown destination, has been managed by 81 years old Mr. Nakata, who used to be postmaster and currently looks after more than 10,000 letters. This is a postcard. Throughout the process of establishment of the project, the question that has came up in my mind is that, is there any fundamental difference or any similarity within us, that is, those who have been living in different cultures but in the same age? I did it with the Photoshop. Yeah. Well, thinking back the days I spent in London last year, the most memorable day was the time I met Brian. It was the time I was visiting the warehouse of the British Postal Museum and Archive for the research of British postal system, when I coincidentally encountered with the former General Post Office worker Brian. At that time, I couldn't help reminding myself that peculiar, thoughtful personality, which I believe is assigned to those who have been working in postal system for a long time, like the postmaster, Mr. Nakata. We're not fighting, but well, in Japan in 1891, the postal system was brought over by Hisoka Maejima, and the postal system created by the Englishman Rowland Hill was introduced into country. During the Meiji Restoration, the schools, railways, and posts in Japan were compared to the brain, veins, and blood flow of the human body. So we can say that the introduction of the postal system from England has played a very important role within Japan's modernization. And I wonder what kind of the world those who postal workers have seen, who actually worked as a blood flow of the ground, who have been working in the same Rowland Hill postal system at the entirely different places and cultures in almost same age. Moreover, what could we explore here at the Missing Post Office UK branch through overlaying these two figures and numerous amount of our memory? On my way back to Japan from Britain, I returned with carrying a blue stained glass that was the handmade present from Mr. Payne to the Missing Post Office in Awashima. It was actually the moment I was physically performing a task like a post office worker by passing the stuff from one person to another. I made this into the documentary film, as some of them might already have seen this at the exhibition. I would like to see it once again after my talk together. The huge amount of letters beyond my expectation makes me wonder one thing. Why do people write a letter to which they can't expect a reply? The letters addressed to the Missing Post Office do not have much possibility to reply back. A bottle may is typical sort of letter with which one won't be able to get a reply, since it is written but will remain drifting in the sea. However, the fact that people still write these letters makes me wonder what motivates them to do so. It would be the scene in stories in which a message in a bottle or a map of a treasures are picked up at the seashore that people imagine when they hear the word bottle mail. These imaginations have been appealing to me since I was a child. A secret has been drifting in the sea which belongs to no one and to everyone. The moment when you take a letter out from the glass bottle, which had been worn away by the wave of the sea, and overlay your gaze onto a gaze of someone unknown to you from unknown age and place would be impressive experience. Although unfortunately I have never found such bottle before myself, I certainly have experienced the special moment of encounter of the gazes. It was when I read the poem by Shuntaro Tanikawa, 20 Billion Light Years of Loneliness. I drink water. 日本語で読みます。20億光年の孤独、谷川俊太郎。人類は小さな玉の上で眠り、起き、そして働き、時々火星に仲間を欲しがったりする。火星人は小さな玉の上で何をしているか僕は知らない。あるいは寝りりし、キルルし、腹らしているか。しかし、時々地球に仲間を欲しがったりする。それは全く確かなことだ。万有引力とは、 き合う孤独の力である。宇宙は歪んでいる。それゆえみんな求め合う。宇宙はどんどん膨らんでゆく。それゆえみんな不安である。20億光年の孤独に僕は思わずくしゃみをした。俊太郎谷川、20 billion light years of loneliness. Mankind on the little globe sleeps, awakes, and works, wishing at times to be friends with Mars. Martians on the little globe are probably doing something, I don't know what. Maybe sleeping, wearing, or fretting. While wishing at times to be friends with Earth, this is a fact I'm sure of. This thing called universal gravitation is the power of loneliness pulling together. The universe is distorted. So all join in desire. The universe goes on expanding, so all feel uneasy. At the loneliness of 20 billion light years, without thinking, I sneezed. The sun, the starry sky, the earth, the plants, the minerals, and the animals, they all don't care what the human are at all. Even at such loneliness of 20 billion light years, we still aspire to find friends at other planets and believe that being over, they're also willing to communicate with us and keep narrating stories. In fact, we have never stopped speaking to since we let being just generated on the earth. We have been investigating constellations inspired by animals and tools out of the layout of stars at the night sky and narrating mythologies. I believe that this desire of the human that tried to communicate with those who are unknown yet would be the most powerful and fundamental act than any other performances the human would take. As I have been engaging with the missing post office closely, I began to be aware that the culture of human does not necessarily being generated through the communication with the objects visible. Instead, I have started thinking that the mechanism of the generation of the culture is actually to keep the endless process of trial and error, even with the thing we have not been able to access with. Will the infinite ambition of the human for communication that has been seen at the missing post office lead us to come across with the beings that we don't know yet where they are? Thanks for listening. をお伺いしておきます。
はい、ありがとう。はい、ありがとう。久保田さん、これ苫小牧から来た北海道。すごい。ね、苫小牧。
本当？
うん、末広町ですか。
東山。
京都です。
京都。
全国からいただいてます。
朝日新聞で読ませていただきました。言えることがすごく助かりますって。
誰かにこう言える方がね、伝えることができるんで、ありがたいよみたいな。
いっぱい来ましたね。
25話ときました。
25通。早い。元局長の技が。
34通でした。
なんで全然違うじゃない。
34通でした。
これも入れて。
それも入れて。
うん。
はい。
鈴木さんはずっと大西さんのおはがき探してたんです。
そう。もう大西さん中心。だから現物なんてないよ。
あ、そっか。
現物を全部探して。
持ってったんですか？結局。
持って帰ってない。
持って帰ってない。
持って帰ったよ。
持って帰ったの？
うん。
あ、そう
全部持って帰ったので。
私はなんか長めに回しちゃうんですよね。で中田さんこの間それで怒ってたんですよ。
何はそんなに長いことでない。ざわぐらいね。
だから
半ぐらい。
ずっと回ってる。あ、できてる。こんにちは。こんにちは、お邪魔します。
お邪魔します。さやとかや。
知らないこれ。
ただいまでもだろうね。
ただいま。
これがいっぱいになったんですよ。これ見て。全部いっぱいになった。それではがきだけこっちして手紙はもう別に。せなもうたちまち、
うん、
ね。
これ読みやすくていいですね。
絵画について。 メロン書いたんやけど、
今回漂流郵便局に看板を作って中田さんに渡してほしいってことで私お預かりしてるんです。
看板
うんほら
あれや
立派ですよね。
そう立派なもんやね。
それ外したら
すごいやな。
ね中田さんもいろいろ作るんですよって言って、
すごいね。
綺麗ですよね。だから窓とかに展示したら綺麗かなと思って、どこか置きましょうかね、明日からの開局の時に。
そうやね。どちら？
だからどうです？いいね。
メイドイン。
メイドイン。
Well made, thank you. So much paper. Okay. Konnichiwa. I've been asked to talk about my early GPO journey and how it eventually led to the missing post office. I'm still not too sure how I arrived there, to be honest, but we shall work through this. So, this is my early career with the GPO. I left school in the summer of 1964. By the end of July that year, I had been offered apprenticeships with 3 engineering companies. Finding a job in the mid-1960s was reasonably straightforward, unlike where we find ourselves today. I chose the GPO, the General Post Office, a government civil service department for postal services and telephones. My dad said to me, "Good choice, son. You'll be eventually paid £1,000 a year and have a job for life." It didn't quite work out like that, although I did stay with the same employer for 31 years. I started out with a weekly pay packet of less than £10, or about £500 a year. £500 wouldn't last now, would it? My apprenticeship was to last 3 years and was divided into blocks of work experience, alternated with 3 months at a London college and various courses. I was required to sit regular City and Guilds examinations. Each had to be passed to remain an apprentice. The periods of work experience were also assessed, and it was necessary to attain a high level of competence to keep your job. Quite a number of apprentices failed to complete their 3-year courses. Luckily I did, but it was tough going. But eventually, and much to my relief, I passed, and a new career was started. In the week before I was due to start my apprenticeship, I had a very thorough medical. Very, very thorough medical. This was to ensure that I was actually alive, which they managed to do, prove that I was. Various places were inspected, for those of you who've been through this sort of medical. I was checked for colour blindness. This was to ensure that I could tell the difference between one wire's colour and the next. Quite essential in the telephone business. So, day 1. I reported with several others at 7:30 to a very grim building in Acton, West London. My first task was to sign the Official Secrets Act, of which this is a copy that they gave me to keep. It's not the one I actually signed on the day. It's funny the things that you keep, isn't it? I'm still bound by it today. Then we were all sent to see the clothing store officer to receive our kit of protective clothing, consisting of a long, thick, dark blue, double-breasted, not quite like this, wool coat, with great big black buttons, a black parramatta, a kind of thick heavy raincoat, which I still have after 51 years. And I'm surprised that I do still have it. I keep it in the car in case I ever break down. Fortunately, it hasn't had too much use. Things were made to last back then. I had 2 brown dust coats for inside work, 2 pairs of blue boiler suits for outside work, and a bright red safety helmet. And finally, a pair of rubber boots with steel toe caps. Excuse me. The kit was all tied up with thick brown string. If it had not been tied together, I would have never been able to carry it home on the bus. Next followed a trip to the tool store officer to receive a very comprehensive toolkit, of which this is some of it. And again, I kept this for so many years. I use it quite a bit. All this was contained in a doctor's type leather bag. Everything, clothes, tools, boots, etc., had to be signed for in triplicate. Typical government regulations. It seemed to me like being in the army. Soon my first day was over and I staggered home with this huge bundle and more instructions to report to my first assignment. External maintenance, known as poles and holes to us. The gang were based in West London, in the West London Telephone Exchange. I was on my way, a very apprehensive 17-year-old. During those 3 years, I worked in many different departments, both inside in the warm and outside in the cold, wet English weather. I worked in several different types of telephone exchanges and offices. I climbed telephone poles and went down wet, rat-infested manholes to fix cables and suffered endless tests and examinations. Little did I know that my experiences would eventually lead me to the Missing Post Office UK. We now move forward to June 2015 and a Father's Day gift from my daughter. Laura, who's up there, had given me 2 tickets to a curator-guided visit for both of us to go to the British Postal Museum and Archive in Debden, East London. Photograph on the right is me standing next to a wagon that I travelled on many times as an apprentice. It's a bit strange when you go to a museum and you find things that you recognise. You're a child, young manhood, should I say. And Laura on the right-hand side is measuring a post box. By all accounts, if you can get your arms around it, it's small, and if you can't, it's large. If you can, you should also take time to wander around their exhibits. It would be time well spent. Mind you, times have changed. Now my daughters take me out. That's wonderful, I have to say. Laura and I were standing in that very British institution, the English queue, when Aiko and I started to chat. We had something in common. A briefcase with a royal coat of arms on it. I had one similar when working for the GPO. We were soon joined by Saya with a matching briefcase. The exhibition opened and we all filed in. It's funny, things you talk about when you get into a queue. The museum curator took us around the exhibits, old post boxes, telephone boxes and other memorabilia. During that other great British institution, the tea break, Laura and I started to chat to Saya and Aiko. They said that they were looking for a UK postmaster, and was I interested in the role? And before I could stop myself, the answer was yes. I don't know why I'd want to stop myself. It's been a fabulous journey, I have to say. We decided to meet at the City and Guilds of London Art School in Kennington, where Saya was an artist in residence, which is next to the telephone exchange where I spent many happy years building new telecom equipment. This very serendipity. I think I need a drink. Thank you.
Serendipity.
That's the word. Serendipity is a wonderful thing. You never know where it will lead you. This meeting with so many parallels in our lives has turned out to be a highlight in my life. Who would have thought that my start in the GPO would lead me to becoming the MPO UK postmaster many years later? Many years later. I was measured there and then for my uniform. It was beautifully made in Japan and delivered in late January. Here I stand. Now I am truly Mr. Nakata's apprentice, learning on the job and in the correct uniform. My first engagement here was at the Daiwa on the 19th of January, and I was to read out 3 postcards translated from Japanese. And I'm sure you've all seen the table in the other room. I selected some postcards from here to read, and I'd like to read a few more to you that have been received here over the past few weeks. I selected them because the sentiments in them could apply to any of us. So this is the first one. Dear Nat, hello from Yorkshire. I've been thinking about the last time we watched a film together. It was Hilary and Jackie with Emily Watson. I miss those visits and lunches with you. I wish I could learn how to make steak and kidney pie like that. Lots of love, Michael. We met by chance, and you opened my eyes to the world. Your curiosity knows no bounds. I'm grateful for the impression that you've made, like a small tap on my shoulder. One day we will travel far and wide together, taking notice of what others ignore. We cross and recross our old paths like figure skaters. Dear Mum and Dad, during your lives, I do not think I told you how much I loved you and appreciated everything that you did for me. Thank you. I love you immensely. All my love, your son. I miss you. To all the lost friends I've ever had, hope your dreams have come true. And finally, as if to somebody's dog. Dear Blue, it only seems like yesterday that you were here. We only had you for a short time, but you made such an impression on our lives. We have pictures of you everywhere, which makes me smile when I look at them. That should be the end of the slides. And to finish, a late postal delivery. I've had it here. It says, to whom it may concern, thank you for a truly wondrous journey, drifting on a sea of serendipity. Thank you. Meeting so many generous, warm and happy people along the way. Thank you for such a wonderful life-affecting experience. Your MPO UK postmaster, Brian. So last couple of lines here, it says, please feel free to leave a written thought or two on one of our postcards before you go home. I have talked to many people who are as fascinated as I am with the inspirational concept that is the missing post office. Long may it continue to be an inspiration for us all. And thank you.